I'd like first to apologize for starting so late. Apparently, we had some difficulties at security, which which delayed us in getting people into the institution. I'm sorry that we are so late. Would also like to welcome everybody, all of us, to the public launch of the coordination mechanism for economic diplomacy. We hope it will be known as COMED. It marks the beginning of the functioning of a vehicle born out of consultations between government, organized business, um, over a period of some months on what needed to be done. These consultations unanimously agreed to establish a mechanism that its sole purpose will be to promote and enhance stakeholder engagement between government, state-owned companies, and private sector in the pursuit of economic opportunities and economic cooperation on the African continent. I would therefore like to recognize the presence of the following ministers and deputy ministers. Honorable Dr. Naledi Pandor, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, is here with us. Um, Honorable Minister Pravin Gordhan, Minister of Public Enterprises, is joining us through a virtual platform. And Honorable Fikile Majola, who's the Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition. We have in our midst and by virtual platform leaders of private sector organizations. Let me particularly acknowledge Ms. Bongwe Kunene, Managing Director of Banking Association South Africa. She's here. Mr. Kaskovadia, CEO of Business Unity. Mr. Mkhaki Matabane, CEO of Black Business Council, is joining us by virtual platform. We also acknowledge the presence of some CEOs and executives of state-owned companies. I've just seen the CEO of AXA, she's here too, and not here. And there's some people from Dinel and so on at the venue through, and also who are here through virtual platform. We have leaders and executives of Export Council, Industry Association, knowledge actors in physical presence and through virtual platform. We also have representatives from NETLAC. A group of important players in our economic diplomacy on the continent is our heads of mission, that is high commissioners, ambassadors, and the consuls generals. They are also here through virtual platform. Most of them actually have joined already. And we also have the senior managers from the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. And I want to thank you all for making time and attend this launch. Without further ado, let me welcome Honorable Dr. Naledi Pandor, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, to deliver the launch statement. Welcome, Minister.
Have they sorted it out, Ambassador Mokoena? Because they know I don't like misspelling and wrong sentences. So rather get rid of this attempt to type what we say, because you're calling us all kinds of funny things. Just stop doing it. It's terrible. Oh, good morning, everyone. And thank you very much, Ambassador Nchinga, for getting us off the ground on this program. Let me greet my colleague, Minister Pravin Gordhan, the Minister of Public Enterprises, and thank him for joining us virtually. We'll hear from him in a few minutes. I'm really pleased that Deputy Minister Fikile Majola is with us, the Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. I also welcome our ambassadors and consul generals who are joining us on the virtual platform and who are part of the men and women who will execute the practical steps required from the work of COMED. DGs present and joining us on the virtual platform. And I'm really thrilled to have very senior representatives from the private sector here with us today. Could I just perhaps, in mentioning them, ask them to stand so that our teams know who they are? So if I could begin with Mr. Kaskuvadia, the CEO of Business Unity South Africa. You're most welcome and thank you for being here. And then Mr. Hanki Matavani, CEO of the Black Business Council. Where is he? He's joining us virtually, and we're really thrilled at that. Ms. Bongiwe Kunene, the managing director, listen to this, managing director of the Banking Association of South Africa, a woman. Absolutely wonderful. Ms. Busi Mavuso, I don't know if she's here, or joining us on the virtual platform, the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa. And of course, all other of our guests and leaders in the business and government sector departments and corporates that have taken on this very important task of coordinating our diplomacy in the economic space and ensuring that we derive maximal success from the efforts that we make together. We're launching, as our program director said, what we regard as a very important initiative, which we believe has the potential to change the way we do business on the continent and to help us achieve our country's economic objectives. In discussing with us as ministers and senior public servants in the public service, our president is always referring to the fact that we are not sufficiently coordinated, that we tend to prefer approaches that are very siloed, very single department oriented, and has encouraged both the executive as ministers and deputy ministers, as well as senior public servants, to develop ways of working more closely together. And I think what we're doing today is an attempt to act on that message. So what we hope for is that we will see through this coordination mechanism greater collaboration and joint work between government departments, state-owned companies, and private sector organizations that are doing or intend to do business on the African continent. I just cannot neglect mentioning how often South African businesses are mentioned when we do international work on the continent. Every country we go to asks us about the possibility of South African investment in their country. Others refer to the work done by our state-owned enterprises in supporting provision of key infrastructure, particularly infrastructure relevant to the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. You know that if we are to successfully implement the AFCFTA, financial sector support is going to be really vital, as is the area of logistics. And we're going to have to ensure that in the construction and transport sectors, we provide the appropriate infrastructure to ensure that goods are moved, that they arrive on time where they should be going, that we have efficient transport systems, that we are able to ensure at every customs point that we don't hold up goods but move them very, very speedily. We're also going to need to ensure that the links between rail and port and air cargo are really efficiently established and that they work to good effect. With the current conflict in Russia, some business colleagues have been calling. They're very concerned about goods that are either at port or at site for delivery to port, and that could be wasted by the delay in transportation, especially the citrus sector, which is such a key economic sector for South Africa. And what is clear from what they're saying is in arranging logistics, we haven't prepared for unexpected developments. So we don't have emergency procedures in place in case something goes wrong. We are now thinking at this moment, as we confront the crisis, about what we should do. So all of these experiences would form part of what the committee must reflect upon, the coordination mechanism, and actually provide advice to the relevant government departments to ensure that action is taken. Having a coordination mechanism will also ensure that if the relevant departments are not responsive, we have a report coming from a collective that we can take to cabinet. And I think this is imperative for our government to know what the impediments might be and what the likely solutions are as proposed from this mechanism. So this is going to be a really important structure. We as South Africa have done a great deal to advance the African agenda, and to do so even more, a coordination mechanism such as the one we launched today will assist us in developing a closer partnership between government and business, and will provide leadership to our government-wide effort to promote our economic interests. The relationship between South Africa, the SADC region, and other regions of the continent will, I believe, greatly benefit from a more coordinated approach. And this will assist in attracting foreign direct investment to South Africa and ensuring we build economies of scale. We always talk about South Africa as the gateway to Africa, hence the importance of us ensuring that we have robust mechanisms and processes that allow us to then appropriately service the rest of the African continent that may rely on us for a great deal of their economic activity. As I said, the AFCFTA provides a framework which we hope will stimulate greater levels of intra-African trade. And what we need to do, and we need to do this in a preemptive, proactive manner, is we should look at how we capitalize on this opportunity and have early strategies as South Africans on how best to leverage existing opportunities. Sometimes I find we have a framework developed coming through the organs of the African Union. We establish the Secretariat, and then we sort of sit back and we're really happy. We have an AFCFTA. We don't have a consistent focus on what does implementation of this instrument mean in a whole range of sectoral areas, and how do we make it an instrument that actually lives in practical terms. So I think we need greater proactive reflection on the AFCFTA and on the steps we must take to ensure it is a success. We are among the bigger economies on the continent, so I do think we have a responsibility to be proactive rather than to rest on our laurels and wait for something to develop. And I'm hoping that this mechanism is really going to be a brains trust for us in the economic diplomacy terrain. So I'm really pleased that through this launch, we are indicating to the South African public and to the African continent that we are making a firm commitment to strengthening South Africa Incorporated's approach on issues of trade and investment cooperation within the African continent. This discussion, which has led to today's launch, began more than a year ago. And at that time, it was primarily DIRCO, the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, as well as the Department of Public Enterprises and a few private sector companies, which reached a point following much deliberation that actually we need to work together. We can't work as separate components, all from within South Africa, and often severally, but in different routes, focused on the same objective. We believe we will only achieve our domestic priorities if we succeed in economic diplomacy. But as government, we can't attract the necessary investment and trade to make an impact on these key national priorities if we work in silos. So in order to effectively address our triple challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality, we do need to ensure that we work closely with the private sector so that we share market intelligence and ensure that we attempt to open doors for the private sector and for our state-owned entities through our representatives on the ground. We are very fortunate to be the African country with the largest diplomatic footprint globally. We should use that to good effect. Otherwise, we've just posted a whole lot of South African officials overseas, and we are leaving them without a key agenda. It's important that we provide them with a very clear roadmap on how they can support the growth imperatives that we wish to see in place. We've decided that we as government must actively reach out to our local entrepreneurs and assist them in making inroads on our continent. It makes no sense to us that many African countries continue to import products and produce from outside the continent when we could manufacture and grow many of these items locally. I also believe that our coordination mechanism must assist us in imagining and determining how we might support particularly countries in our neighborhood, in the SADC region, to become producers that can benefit from implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. Because I think our ambition is not just about South Africa. It must be an ambition about SADC. It must be an ambition about the African continent. But for me, SADC is critically important. And we need to look at what can be produced there, which can then have South Africa as an assistant and help grow economies in our region so that you don't have this pull to South Africa and this inadequacy of development in our neighborhood. We are committed to working with all stakeholders in the promotion of our national interests. We've also very positively reacted whenever private sector companies have approached us to support them when they've been treated unfairly when doing business outside of South Africa. And as DIRCO, through our missions and this department, we will always be ready to provide assistance to South African businesses that have operations in various African countries. I know that some countries have experienced sudden excessive demands of VAT payment, unanticipated tax receipts and tax bills, demands for significant deposits prior to offering a tender for a license. All of these things we have discussed when they've been reported to us, and we have been able to arrive at agreement with countries in which such experiences have been reported to us. And I think I've found from time to time that several governments are unaware of the demands that are being made to them. So it is to our businesses. So it is important that we get the reports so that we can talk to the relevant government about how their authorities in the trade sector are conducting themselves. We recently conducted a review within our Africa branch here at DIRCO, and we identified a number of important emerging trends on the continent. Firstly, it's clear that new political competitors on the continent are offering economic packages which cannot be easily refused. Second, we see a scramble for Africa's resources by foreign powers, which has intensified, sometimes accompanied by support of security companies whose mandate really is to rob these countries of their natural resources. So at times, these foreign companies are prepared to use any strategy to gain traction and advantage in the very, very robust competition for strategic minerals and resources. We've also noted that Pan-Africanism, while a very popularly stated concept, it has waned on the continent alongside the development of narrow national interests, which have assumed greater importance than a Pan-African ideal. And thus we find limited commitment to solidarity efforts and to the anti-colonial struggles, which we still must wage. So when you talk to colleagues, for example, about the important need to beneficiate mineral resources on the continent, you don't get much buy-in because there are already commitments that have been made outside of the continent. So there isn't a Pan-African plan for value addition on the continent, which would allow export of value-added goods. So these are some of the competing challenges and interests we must respond to. We also find that our competitors from outside of the continent enter the African market with what appears to be seamless cohesion between government, state-owned companies, and their private sector. So they are very coordinated when we are not, which means then we are in trouble. We also note that they enjoy effective coordination and make timely decisions on investments. So for example, while we are dilly-dallying about a visa for an investor, a country has made a decision through approaching their government within a 3-week period. We take months and months and months. We have people who come and tell us, I wanted to invest this quantum, and I've been waiting 7 months to get a reply on a work visa because I want to be in South Africa. I want to oversee my money as I invest in your country. And so we have to scramble to get that visa very, very quickly. This should be something that this mechanism resolves in very quick time, because I'm aware, in terms of the immigration legislation, that we are able to make these decisions very quickly, because we have very clear provisions in immigration law with how we deal with those who wish to invest in South Africa and who require visas, business visas, or other types of legal instruments from our migration system. We also find that South African investors in our continent have often been left vulnerable to local laws, which are implemented selectively and at the whim of sometimes corrupt government officials. We picked this up in particular with respect to Tanzania, which had put in place certain laws that were intended to promote localization, but they were for a temporary period. And after a 12-month, I think, period in which locals enjoyed greater access and benefit, the government then passed a regulation allowing more open access. But the officials continued to utilize that old regulation, and the government wasn't aware that was happening. And so some of our business investors, senior managers in Tanzania, faced really difficult times. And fortunately, they came to report to us. We were able to meet the Tanzanian authorities, who then realized that corrupt officials were abusing a regulation that was no longer law to actually get resources. Apparently, Transnet has really excellent capacity in rail development, but it has dumbed down that capacity. And so many projects for rail network development on the African continent are passing us by with some of our state-owned enterprises. As I've said, we have the institutional network as the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. We have 47 full diplomatic missions on the continent, and we have full diplomatic relations with all countries on the continent, including Western Sahara. We operate in countries that have a varied range of stability, and we play, I think, a very important role in promoting peace and stability in the continent, including in supporting post-conflict reconstruction. We encourage the achievement of stability in countries on the continent and really work closely with them in developing infrastructure and in developing industry. The infrastructure might be road, might be rail, in Côte d'Ivoire it might be bridges, but all of this plays an important role in business development and helps to create employment and helps to reduce poverty both in those countries as well as in our own. We've noted that almost every country on the continent has a national development plan with massive opportunities for the business and state-owned enterprise sector. We believe South Africa could play a massive role in helping to achieve the objectives of all African countries' national development plans. We also have very strong ties with many countries due to their historic links to our struggle for freedom and their keenness to partner with South Africa now that we enjoy freedom and democracy. But we need to be aware we face competition. It's not all our own terrain. Some of our neighbors believe the foreign offers are more beneficial. At times, we believe some of our businesses charge very high rates and then become uncompetitive in a number of contract areas. So all of this must be looked at, because if we work on the basis that we will make a quick buck from the African continent, others will make a better offer and we will lose important contracts. So we should ensure that we are competitive, and that we bring a competitive edge to our interactions. I haven't met a single government on the continent that is not interested in working more closely with South African business, and this is why we do need to have coordination. We have information, we have indications of interest, and it is through the coordination mechanism that we can table these matters, and hopefully our colleagues in the private sector and state-owned enterprises would then take them up, and we can go back to countries on the continent with a clear set of interest or offers from businesses in South Africa. So, ladies and gentlemen, in closing, I'm really appealing to those who will make up the coordination mechanism and its various working groups to really work hard to turn our commitment to economic diplomacy into tangible actions on the ground, which will give us higher African trade, higher African investment, higher African growth and prosperity. If we make a success of this, I believe the results for South Africa and for the entire continent will be extremely positive. And of course, the focus for me today has been the continent, and as I said, a key strategic area is SADC region. But I believe if we get this right, our entire international trade will benefit. Because you will know, for example, that in the Middle East and Asia, there are huge opportunities in the halal products trade arena, and we're being asked about this every week. So your coming together will help identify opportunity, not just as opportunity, but opportunity as success. I really wish all the colleagues who will work in this mechanism well, and I look forward in us meeting a year or so from today and assessing whether we were able to derive benefit from this collaboration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister Pandor. Let me take this opportunity to also acknowledge, I think it's important that we do so, AXA's CEO, Ms. Mpumi Mpofu, who's here from AXA. And then there's also the CEO of Dinel Electronics, Mr. Mike Khobe. Saw him earlier on. Oh, there he is, yeah. So there's a general.
Whilst I agree with the general format and direction, I think we need to be clear that you are seeking through this initiative as well. So let me encourage the various ambassadors and so on that we've got to move, and I'm sure you would agree with that, Minister Pandor, from talking to acting. And if we focus all of our energy promoting South Africa, and we shouldn't be shy about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Program Director, Ambassador Chinga, Minister Dr. Naledi Pandor. Thanks for inviting us. Minister Pravin Gordhan, ambassadors, both here in the House and virtually. Ms. Bongiwe Kunen, Managing Director.
So I also want to repeat Minister Pandor, Managing Director, Banking Association, South Africa. Ms. Kes Kovadia, CEO of BUSA. Mr. Hanki Matabani, COO of Black Business Council, who's joining us virtually. Senior government officials present, all other business executives, members of the media, distinguished guests. Firstly, I must thank Minister Pandor for inviting us as the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition to this important platform. As the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, we commend DECO for taking this important step in creating a platform for strategic economic and commercial engagement with the African continent. I agree fully with you, Minister Pandor and Minister Godan. Our attitude is that the African continent is going to become an important area of engagement for us as South Africa. This platform will accord us, as all government departments, a consultative platform with business and state-owned companies in pursuance of an integrated approach towards the continent. So in the realm of South Africa, incorporated approach. I want to go back to the inaugural State of the Nation address by President Ramaphosa in 2019, when he spoke about his vision for the African continent and our world. And I want to quote him because this is what guides us in the work we currently doing. And I open quote, an essential part of South Africa's growth strategy is the integration of our economy with those our neighbors, SADC, and the rest of our continent. The African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement will improve the movements of goods, services, capital, and means of production across the continent. Our revitalized industrial strategy focuses on the expansion of our trade and investment links with the rest of the Southern African region and the continent at large. And within the South African development community, we will prioritize development of cross-border value chains in key sectors such as energy, mining, and mineral beneficiation, manufacturing, infrastructure, and agro-processing. End of quote. Maybe the Director General of Minerals and Energy is present here. Minister Patel and the leadership of our state-owned companies. Questions of infrastructure in the region and in the continent are going to be very critical for the success of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Others would not be able to move goods as fast as we need across the region and across the continent as a whole. Honorable Ministers Pandor and Godan, the DTIC has defined a very ambitious plan for 2022-2023 and beyond. And one of the key objectives of our plan is to enhance the competitiveness of South African firms in order to position them to fully capitalize on the opportunities flowing from the implementation of the AFCFTA. In this regard, COMED could serve as a complementary and useful platform to strengthen collaboration across government departments, other public entities, and our social partners, including private sector and labor. COMED could also help us to craft a common agenda and develop a joint program of action vis-à-vis the rest of the African continent, akin to a South African incorporated approach. In terms of South Africa's merchandise exports, Africa was the third largest destination for South Africa on average over the last 5 years, followed by Asia and Europe. It is important to note that the bulk of South Africa's exports to the rest of the world is mainly dominated by unprocessed raw materials, as you indicated, Honorable Minister, while exports into the continent are mainly value-added manufactured goods. So you underline the importance of SADC. Most of our value-added goods go to Africa, and whilst we export raw materials to the rest of the world, but we export more value-added goods to the rest of the continent, and in particular, the SADC region, which has become our very key trading partner. I just want to give some statistics that South Africa's share of intra-African exports varied from 26% to 31% over the period 2013 to 2019, followed by Nigeria at 13.9% in 2019, and DRC at only 7% in 2019. South Africa is also the leading nation in Africa in intra-African imports, accounting for 14%, followed by Namibia at 7% and Botswana at 6%. We are also a major investor in the continent. Between January 2003 and December 2021, a total of 558 FDI projects were recorded. These projects represent a total capital investment of 253 billion rand, which is an average investment of 3.1 billion per project. We could do even better. So, Minister Pandor, we're looking at the possibility as the DTIC, in light of the implementation of the AFCFT, to now set up a fully fledged Africa division that focuses on all matters relating to the continent, whether it's trade policy, export, import, so that we have an integrated approach, a division that can look at Africa as a whole in an integrated way, including on matters of infrastructure. We hope that other departments can do the same. The Department of Public Enterprises, our infrastructure departments, transport, and the Department of Minerals and Energy can play an important role in this endeavor. One of our most serious weaknesses, and I hope that, so you say that, Minister, that in a year's time, you would like to come back to look at progress that has been made. I think myself, the officials, myself and the other deputy ministers, our hands are more free than you, so we could do some work even between now and the year. Well, we agree with you fully. one of our biggest challenges is that we are not coordinated, firstly as government, but secondly as South Africans. I find that we move in different directions as different constituencies. And many other serious countries, and I call them serious countries, don't behave this way. They act in the interest of their own countries, and all sectors are coordinated to advance their national interests. So I do believe that we do need to spend more time on our coordination as South Africa, not just as government, but government and all other social partners. We have been having a discussion on the development of the cannabis industry recently, a matter that President Ramaphosa paid a lot of attention to during his recent soar. What do we do? Too much red tape, too many discussions amongst ourselves. As we do so, many countries, including those far smaller than South Africa, are beginning to move ahead of us. And this is a new industry, it's a developing industry. So first movers are important in new and developing industries. So I do think that, and it's just one example. So we need to spend some more time discussing how we want to work together as South Africans and understand that our internal contradictions in the country are secondary compared to our national interest. I would like to conclude, Honorable Minister, by saying that we would like to give you the assurance as the DTIC. And I know that our officials work quite closely with DECO. We want to give you the full assurance on my behalf and on behalf of Minister Patel that we will give you full support and give our full commitment to ensure that COMED is empowered and it can achieve and fulfill its mandate. And with this, Ambassador Nchenga, I'd like to thank you very much. We fully behind this initiative and will support this mechanism to the extent we can, Minister. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Now I think we will change gear, move from government to private sector. And when we go to private sector, our first speaker is going to be Ms. Bongwe Kunene, Managing Director, Banking Association, South Africa. Ms. Kunene, you have the floor. The floor is yours.
Honorable Minister, ministers who are on the line, ambassadors, leaders of SOCs, leaders of business who are here with us, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, Minister, for the opportunity to be here today. From a banking perspective, it can be quite daunting to talk about an initiative that is being launched, because we work Whenever we launch anything, there's always a time frame. We have quarterly results, half-year results, and so on. You have your half one, half two, and all the time you are looking, what is the next? So forgive me if I start at what is the next. Using the voice of South African banks, we already operate in 25 African countries. And those operations are strongly anchored in what the banks want to achieve in those countries. And they always follow the principle that the home country, South Africa, is where the results get to be reported. And that's where the issues in manner of risks, perspectives, profitability, and the state of the business get to be discussed. So South Africa becomes a unit of account for an entity when it is outside of this geography. And in that language, we welcome the establishment of COMED because it becomes an accountability mechanism. So as an accountability mechanism, we would like to get a sense that we all understand what are the risks that we are facing. And I'm going to share one which is very cogent because it's new, it's in the news, and others maybe are not so new. But we do know that we get to be rated. There are metrics that are used to judge whether capital in the form of money and other resources will come to South Africa. So if you look at Transparency International, for example, they always give you the mark of 50 as where you shouldn't be below. And MNOs, all these companies which have a global view, immediately a country gets to be under 50, they start training their officials. If you go to this country, these are the indicators that you should be looking at, because the perception of corruption moves from the perception to a perceived reality. So looking at us, we are now at number 44. In 2021, we're number 44, which means that these people who do these exercises, there's a whole industry of training people how to behave when you go to countries under 50. We are now in that, and that affects South African banks. After 9/11, the world became very serious about financial crimes and how you tackle the value chain of financial crimes. So it became an added risk sometime last year, expressed on the 1st of March, when the US Treasury said that it now has a list. We don't know how short that list is, of entities that could be traced to South Africa that would be part of the risk in the international financial architecture. So we would like to use COMED as a space where we look at shared risks, because this is not just about us as banks, but it is a systemic risk for the country and for different sectors. Financial sector may be a heightened vulnerability, but this is a systemic risk against the country. So if we could have conversations within COMED which go beyond our ability as banks to be good corporate citizens wherever we are, but sharing with each other what these risks are and what they mean. Because it's one thing to say that this is a risk, but what does it mean for this sector as compared to the other sector? And also, what does it mean for the whole country? And if I'm holding a view that says, as an economic actor, I have a role to play in economic diplomacy outside the borders of my country, what will it mean for the banking industry? And Minister, we want to assure you that our contribution has also to be measured in terms of what I will call the triple C: coordination, meaningful contribution, and communication. So on these triple Cs, an area, this is anecdotal because I don't have a study on it, where I think all of us as South Africans need to do a lot more. It's on collaboration and coordination, because we do know what we need to do when we are outside of our country, but sometimes we communicate with different voices. So, for example, in this regard, I want to highlight one serious issue that we are attending to as a country, and that issue would be that of state capture. We have been attending to it for a number of years now, which means that our communication cannot be at the level of we were captured. Maybe it is a time when we should pivot and say that this is what we are doing. Because if we've got numbers, what was affected with state capture, the question is, who is in charge of consequence management? What are these consequential actions that we have taken? Because the communication that comes from ourselves is how other countries, other state actors, economic actors judge us. So this is my last point, Minister, just on how we communicate about ourselves as South Africa. We know what is wrong, we know what was wrong, but maybe the emphasis is what it is we are doing to correct all these actions that we have identified, because it's our program. And as the banking sector, for us, actions will always count a lot more than anything we say. So count on us to contribute on how these actions, how we add to the actions. And maybe the last point on the additions, it's not so much what we can put as money, because money is not the biggest driver of change, but it's what we can contribute on systemic thinking, on systemic accountability mechanisms, including this one, COMED. And we would dearly love to be here, Ambassador Nchinga, next year to talk about maybe not a lot. I believe in small numbers. So maybe if you give us a task limited to 3 and see us run, we are willing to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kunene. Thank you. Now it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Kaskovadia from Business Unit South Africa.
Thank you, Ambassador Nchinga, and thank you for the invitation. Honorable Minister Pandor, Minister Gordon, Deputy Minister Majola, DGs present, and other guests, both physically and virtually. Let me just start by saying, Minister Pandor, that I've had the privilege of, I think, the last three contingents over the last few years of our envoys going to various countries. When they are brought together here, I think, and they are spoken to by different people just to set context and so on. I've had the pleasure of speaking to, I think, the last three contingents over the last few years. And it's been very interesting because I talked to them about, one, the importance of them understanding if they are going to promote South Africa trade and so on, to understand how business works in South Africa, what businesses' needs are. And to also, I suggested to them that we look at some sort of a mechanism where we keep in touch with each other. So through BUSA, maybe once every quarter, a newsletter goes out to all of our embassies or consuls to tell them what the latest issues are. So that as they're talking to people, they also have these latest issues and they can promote relationships between our countries from a more informed point of view. So I think, as you said, Minister, that I think COMED, I think, is an excellent initiative. And if we can make it work on the continent, I think we should expand it across the spectrum of our representation in different parts of the world, because it should be and could be a good mechanism. And I'll speak for business, but I guess other social partners as well. But it would be a good mechanism for business to keep in touch with our envoys in different parts of the world, to exchange information, to give them up-to-date information and so on. So I think that we should consider that. We certainly welcome COMED, and as Bongi said, we are committed to work with COMED, and as Minister Gordon said, to actually make sure that if we activate what we agree on and we actually move with speed on that. Let me also just, to a certain extent, add to what I think our economy and promote what we can do. Because there's absolutely no doubt, given the diverse economy we have, given the type of economy we have, there's absolutely no doubt that we have the capacity and the capability to add significant value to the continent. Let me also just talk a little bit about, Minister Pandor, what you said about competitiveness, and we need to be competitive. I think businesses from other parts of the world, foreign, outside of the continent, are often able to be competitive because of the cohesion they have with the governments. And where they need the governments to actually back them up through subsidies or whatever the case may be, the governments do. And I think that's been lacking in our country. So let's take Davos as an example. Every year, just before Davos, the president calls business together and we talk about how we're going to present a united front there. Then we come back and we carry on like business as usual. And that's not the way to do it, surely. So I think that, one, Bongi touched on some of the internal issues. I think that it is important for us to, on an ongoing basis, engage, and certainly business and government, we would want to engage bilaterally, to engage to ensure that we are on the same page on a whole range of things. And I think Deputy Minister Majola talked about the SONA. And I think certainly for business, the SONA was very clear that business, you have a job to do. We are willing to do that job. But the president was also very clear that government, you have a job to do. And that's to create an environment so that business can do profitable and responsible business and can employ people. And I think we need to get that right here. What Bongi was talking about, Transparency International and so on, we can't pretend anymore that we have the moral high ground as South Africa, even on the continent. And so we've got to look at those internal issues. We've got to position ourselves internally appropriately so that we are able to position ourselves outside appropriately. You also mentioned, Minister Pandor, the issue about visas and so on and so on. I think we need to enable business to do business in South Africa as we enable them to do business outside of South Africa. So the recent appointment of Sipho and Kosi as heading up a team to look at red tape, those sorts of initiatives are critical because those are the sorts of things that, if we get right, will enable business to grow here. Because if they grow here, they can grow on the continent, and they have the ability to grow on the continent. So I think that's something we need to look at. So we believe that this is a very good initiative. We believe that we need to, between business and government, work together to enable our envoys in other countries to speak from an informed position, to be able to, on the basis of fact, represent our country, to understand what businesses in South Africa need to do business elsewhere, and to enable that, and to ensure that we do business responsibly in those countries as well. So having said all of that, we look forward to working with the initiative, whatever structures are put together to identify appropriate capacity for those structures and to identify 2 or 3 issues that we can tackle fairly quickly. And as you said, Minister Pandor, perhaps come back in a year's time and report some progress and results. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And our last guest, our last speaker for today is Mr. Kanki Matabane from Black Business Council. He is virtual, yeah. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Program Director. It looks like there's some echo. I don't know where it's coming from. Thank you very much, Ambassador Nzinga, for inviting us. Minister Pandor, Minister Goden, Deputy Minister Majola, ambassadors, all protocol observed. We were actually at the Black Business Council, we're actually glad, just like my colleagues have indicated, Kes as well. We were glad that this opportunity is presenting itself. And this is very important in light of the African continental free trade area. It's going to be very, very important for the country to ensure that there's a proper coordination if we want to take advantage of the African continental free trade area. We've always been very, very jealous, as I'm giving an example, very jealous of China. So when China goes to countries, they always basically take what is called China Incorporated, which includes the SOCs, it includes the private sector, it includes everyone, and they almost attack a country and say, this is our plan. So I think as South Africa, we need to also have a plan when we approach the continent. China has got will have 100-year plan for Africa, and I don't think if we work together, we won't be able to achieve that. So we in short welcome this, and we think also this will also ensure that our public-private partnership model is also tested. Because we, for example, tried to do some business in the Gambia. Some of our members wanted to do some business in the Gambia, but there was a need for Transnet to also partner with our members in developing some of the rail system there. But because we are not properly coordinated, the project never actually went any further. And lastly, we as business, we always emphasize the issue of implementation, and my colleagues who just spoke have done the same. So we were hoping there will be implementation. We're hoping next year, this time, there will be a report back, or even earlier, the earlier the better, where we can then say we have done 1, 2, 3, and we have learned ABC, and we think we can improve on 1, 2, 3 going forward. Thank you very much, Ambassador, and everyone for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matava, and thank you very much, Dave. I think we now move towards the end of our of our launch. We were going to have a presentation on COMED, how it's supposed to work, but we think because there's no time, we started late. We'll circulate it to all the participants. And I would just want to take this opportunity to say we have had quite, from you today, quite a clear mandate. We received quite a clear mandate of what is expected of us, what we're supposed to be doing. And I think I can stand here and say that both the government and the private sector are indeed committed to carry this forward. As it has been said, that this has been one of the biggest gaps that we have had in our work. And we intend to do our level best and say, Honorable Minister Pandor, that in a year's time, maybe before the end of the year, we will be coming back here to give some initial reports of what we have done and what we have achieved and so on. And I would also want to say to the people who are in the working committee, like the organized business and the different government departments, that the working committee is going to be meeting soon. We'll give the date later on to finalize the thing of working groups, because we had this suggestion that we must establish working groups so that different sectors should be able to belong to different working groups. So we still have that outstanding in finalizing the working groups, which will then we will circulate that as soon as possible. With those few words, I want to say to you, Minister, Deputy Minister, and the ministers and ambassadors, business leaders, both state-owned and private-owned, and colleagues from the civil service, say thank you very much for coming, and we hope that this is just the beginning, and we'll take it seriously. What was said earlier on, that this should not become a talk shop, but it should be action orientated, that we will be giving results as soon as possible. Thank you. Those few words, thank you for being here. Thank you.